Exodus chapter 35. Exodus chapter 35. And Moses gathered all the congregation of the children of Israel together, and said unto them, These are the words which the Lord hath commanded, that ye should do them. 6 days shall work be done, but on the 7th day there shall be to you an holy day, a Sabbath of rest to the Lord. Whosoever doeth work therein shall be put to death. Ye shall kindle no fire throughout your habitation upon the Sabbath day. And Moses spake unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, This is the thing which the Lord commanded, saying, Take ye from among you an offering unto the Lord. Whosoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it an offering of the Lord, gold and silver and brass and blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen, and goat's hair and ram skins dyed red, and badger skins and shittim wood, and oil for the light, and spices for anointing oil, and for the sweet incense, and onyx stones, and stones to be set for the ephod and for the breastplate. And every wise-hearted among you shall come and make all that the Lord hath commanded. The tabernacle, his tent, and his covering, his taches, and his boards, his bars, his pillars, and his sockets, the ark and the staves thereof, with the mercy seat and the veil of the covering, the table and his staves and all his vessels, and the showbread, and the candlestick also for the light, and his furniture and his lamps with the oil for the light, and the incense altar and his staves, and the anointing oil and the sweet incense, and the hanging for the door at the entering in of the tabernacle, the altar of burnt offering with his brazen grate, his staves and all his vessels, the laver and his foot, the hangings of the court, his pillars and their sockets, and the hanging for the door of the court, the pins of the tabernacle and the pins of the court, and their cords, the cloths of service to do service in the holy place, the holy garments for Aaron the priest, and the garments of his sons to minister in the priest's office. And all the congregation of the children of Israel departed from the presence of Moses. And they came, every one whose heart stirred him up, and every one whom his spirit made willing, and they brought the Lord's offering to the work of the tabernacle of the congregation, and for all his service, and for all the holy garments. And they came, both men and women, as many as were willing-hearted, and brought bracelets and earrings and rings and tablets, all jewels of gold, and every man that offered an offering of gold unto the Lord. And every man with whom was found blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen and goat's hair and red skins of rams and badgers' skins brought them. Every one that did offer an offering of silver and brass brought the Lord's offering. And every man with whom was found shittim wood for any work of the service brought it. And all the women that were wise-hearted did spin with their hands, and brought that which they had spun, both of blue and of purple and of scarlet and of fine linen. And all the women whose hearts stirred them up in wisdom spun goat's hair. And the rulers brought onyx stones, and stones to be set for the ephod and for the breastplate, and spice and oil for the light, and for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense. The children of Israel brought a willing offering unto the Lord, every man and woman whose heart made them willing, to bring for all manner of work, which the Lord had commanded to be made by the hand of Moses. And Moses said unto the children of Israel, See, the Lord hath called by name Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and he hath filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom, in understanding, and in knowledge, and in all manner of workmanship, and to devise curious works, to work in gold, and in silver, and in brass, and in the cutting of stones, to set them, and in carving of wood, to make any manner of cunning work. And he hath put in his heart that he may teach both he and Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan. Them hath he filled with the wisdom of heart, to work all manner of work of the engraver, and of the cunning workman, and of the embroidery, in blue and in purple, in scarlet and in fine linen, and of the weaver, even of them that do any work, and of those that devise cunning work. Let's pray. Dear Lord, I thank you for this day. I thank you that we have the freedom to come and read our Bibles at church, and that we live in the country we do today, and that we have the ability, as we learned this morning, to have stewardship and the freedoms to vote. And Lord, I pray we wouldn't misuse those, but we would take the responsibility to be good American citizens and also good Christian soldiers for Jesus Christ, Lord. I pray that as our pastor comes before us, you would fill him with your Holy Spirit and you'd preach to us the truth, and that you would just convict us through your word. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Danny. All right. See, in the previous chapters that they'd been previously commanded to give a free will offering, but then before they could give this free will offering, they had a few issues to clear up, particularly that of the golden calf to get out of their life, and trying to serve the Lord through an idol and so forth, and different things like that, and doing it the wrong way. All that stuff had to be cleared up. And indeed, there's a lot of things that people think that can be, that if they give an offering to the Lord, that, oh, this will be acceptable, this is the time accepted, and this is how I should give the offering, and because I give this offering, I can somehow be blessed of the Lord. Now, obviously, we know that if you give an offering, you're not always going to be blessed by the Lord, because we can see how Ananias and Sapphira gave all that they had and were not blessed by the Lord. In fact, they died because they had lied about how much they gave and what they gave and to the service of the Lord. And they, because their heart was not right with the Lord, and they tried to deceive God's people and what they were giving and whether they were truly willing and so forth, that they died right then and there. They tried to do a work in sin and get blessed by the Lord for it, and you're not going to be able to do that way. So obviously, before you bring a free will offering to the Lord, you need to get your heart right. No, when God gave the free will offering, He did not say, I don't care your spiritual condition, just go ahead and give it to me. I don't care if you're worshiping a golden calf, you can go worship the golden calf on Monday, but on Sunday or Saturday, you can come along and build the temple of the Lord. No. He's like, get rid of all that stuff. I'm not going to have you build this thing for me of your free will heart if you're off in sin and wickedness and doing all that stuff. And so, first of all, I want you to point out that the free will offering of the Lord for His work is for His people. You need to know that if you are receiving offerings of a lost and wicked people to do the work of the Lord and a non-sanctified people, that money will not be blessed. That money is not desired by the Lord. That is not what His purpose in the free will offering is, not to get resources and money and stuff. Is rather that people of a free and willing heart that want to serve the Lord in the way that God has commanded will serve the Lord with all that they have. And so oftentimes that's why I kind of wonder about some of the methods that people use to receive money of the Lord. Now, obviously, there's a lot of methods today to receive money for the work of the Lord. There are methods like a lot of times people have, like in this popular day and age, they have on their website a donate button. Anybody who wants to can come to their website and donate. Oh, it's such a great convenience. Never mind that 4% of your donations go to Visa or whatever, and all these things. And now, obviously, there are conveniences to that. If you want to buy a product or something that is beneficial, or like there are ministries that sell products, like CDs and DVDs, and give them out, and there are ministries for preaching and so forth that sell DVDs, and they have a donate button or whatever. That's all good and fine. They're producing a product, and they should get the benefits of their service, and you can use obviously 4% going to Visa or whatever out of that convenience to transport the money to them for their service. And I understand all that. That's great and wonderful and fine. But the primary purposes of building the Lord's work needs to come from the Lord's people. And if your sources for the Lord's work comes from every which way, and you have no idea who's giving this money, perhaps maybe the guy won the lottery that day, and he's like, well, I'm going to tithe my 10% of the lottery. Well, hallelujah, yay, I got 10% of the money. The question is was that person's heart right with the Lord? Was he sanctified for the Lord? Was his efforts in somehow giving and contributing God's portion from his windfall of gambling and immoral behavior, perhaps, and so forth, was that appropriate for the Lord? Now, obviously, the individual churches and the individual person giving the offering has to make those determinations for themselves. I'm not going to make that determination for all of Christendom. I'm not going to say that church is wrong for having a donate button on their website. That church is wrong for having receiving offerings from every single person that steps in their door and so forth. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be the type of person that dictates the spiritual life of every individual who puts money in the offering plate. But the question is that so oftentimes with people's political motivations and people's deceptive heart, that there's a lot of places that would have been shut down because they were immoral, like those health and wellness gospel preaching. Majority of those things on TV, you see, they say, bring me your seed money, bring me your tithe money, bring all these things. And if they didn't receive it from out there, from the greater, bigger whole, they would not have a church to support them. They would be in any reasonable church, any common sense Christian who is reading their Bible would not support their ministry, and they would not go to their church. But because they are getting their money from the greater, larger, who knows where, then they can be supported by the lost person who wants to get some sort of wealth and contribution from the Lord. If I send my $10,000 to this ministry, that preacher said that the Lord will give me, and their offerings based upon greed. They don't want to give unto the Lord because of a willing heart, but they want to give so that they can get. And that is not the purpose of the free will offering. Is still that you bless so that I can be blessed and we can all drive around Corvettes and whatever, but that'd be nice. Anyway, purple Corvette for Bridget, Daniel, you want one? Right. The thing is that here's the foundation for the free will offering that the church is to receive. Moses gathered all the congregation. Obviously, we know church means congregation, called out assembly, and so forth. And there was a church in the wilderness, and the congregation was gathered together, those who wanted to serve the Lord. Now, obviously, not everybody in the nation of Israel wanted to serve the Lord, but the nation as a whole was to serve the Lord. And the congregation specifically that gathered around Moses at the tent of the congregation, that tent, I believe, was the church for Israel, but that's a whole other message in itself. But here, for our purposes here, I want you to understand the church aspect of this in the sense that the application for them in a free will offering is still the same application that you can apply to the church today. I'm not trying to say that we're the same type of church, but I'm trying to say that the application is the same. And Moses gathered all the congregation of the children of Israel together. First of all, they were gathered. Remember, Israel means spiritual Jacob. They gathered the spiritual congregation of the children of Israel together. And unto them, these are the words which the Lord had commanded that ye should do them. And he gave them the commandments of the law. He gave them the commandments of these things and so forth, that they were to do them. And then he says, and then he starts out with the seventh day there shall be unto you a holy day, a Sabbath rest unto the Lord. Whosoever doeth the work therein shall be put to death. So he starts out with the Sabbath day. It's quite interesting that when Paul institutes in 2 Corinthians, he says that I commission on every the first of the week to bring the offering. He gives a specific day. And then here we also see that he gives a specific day of rest unto the Lord, and then and he starts out with that, and then it's quite interesting that Paul starts out with a specific day, the first day of the week, for their offering as well. And then so this starts out with 6 days shall work be done. So in other words, when you are working to build this tabernacle and to build my church, you need to respect my commandments. You need to respect my Sabbath day. You need to respect this thing. And as Christians, in order to give to the work of the Lord and to contribute, we need to respect the assembling of ourselves together. We need to respect the first of the week. We need to respect the fact that there are set ways to do things. That God has commanded a certain thing for His community, for His congregation. Just as He gave commandments to them, so too He gave commandments to the early church to do things in a certain way and a certain aspect. And so here he says, when you're building a work for me, you need to remember to rest. Now, see, a lot of times people get this idea that, oh, I'm working for the Lord, I'm contributing to the work of the Lord, and it's so important that I don't have time to stop. I don't have time to rest. I don't have time to go off and focus on actually learning from the Lord, because I'm doing so much for the Lord that I can't stop and learn from the Lord. And we remember in the previous chapters that that the Sabbath day was directly applied to actually receiving wisdom from God. The people that were supposed to learn of God, to receive His Spirit, their spirit would be refreshed through focusing on the Lord through the Sabbath day, from resting from their work, so that they can focus on receiving something from the Lord, and that's when they receive their ability to understand and comprehend and learn from the Word of God. So they needed that time to just stop what they were doing in their work to receive of the Lord new instructions, or to refresh their mind on how they're supposed to do the work. And a lot of times this is similar to the analogy of when if you're cutting wood as a lumberjack, that you need to stop every once in a while and sharpen your axe, otherwise that axe will become dull, and then the work that you would have been able to do in sharpening the axe is negated by the fact that you're trying to fell a tree with a blunt object. It's not going to work. And so they know that there's a set time of work and a set time of sharpening. And this is the application that he's putting here, both in receiving spiritual wisdom in the previous chapters that we discussed about the two men in receiving wisdom, but he's also reapplying it here to the congregation. You need to remember that when we're doing a great work for the Lord, when we're building this church for the Lord, that we need to stop and consider what the Lord would have us to do. We need to stop, and that's why it's so important that, yes, soul winning is very important, and that's what we do on Saturdays and throughout the week and so forth as we're able to. But soul winning is like, well, we're going to just skip the morning services on Sunday because nobody's at work, and so we're all going to go out soul winning, and we're going to skip the assembly together to read from the Word to the Lord together, because soul winning is more important. We need to save souls from the hellfire. We need to remove. God's saying, hey, hold on a second. You need to learn of me. You need to, because if you go out there soul winning and never consider the word of the Lord and anything other than soul winning or whatever, because that is such an important work that we're doing for the Lord, that you're going to lose focus. And just like that axe, you're going to get dull. You're going to start trying to rebuke people because of the sins of the flesh, for just rebuking them for the sins of the flesh, and forget that the reason why we rebuke them is to bring them back to the Lord in reconciliation. You need to learn of the Lord, because He is meek and lowly. He is not arrogant and haughty. And so we need to realize that hey, when we assemble together to learn from the Word of God every Sunday and Wednesday, and as we open our Bible to study every morning or whatever in our devotions, those are to sharpen our axe. Those are to refresh us. Those are to make us remember that it's not our work that we're doing for the Lord, but rather the Lord is working through us. And as we focus on Him in our ministry, we can become sharper soul winners. We can become greater works for Him, so that in our resting time, we can prepare and educate ourselves to be more effectual in the work that God has called us to. And so that's why he starts out in receiving spiritual wisdom by resting in the Lord and not trying to just focus on the work, but you need to rest. And this is so important that he says, 6 days shall work be done. He says, you need to be working 6 days. So in other words, this Sabbath rest works two ways. Some people are just lazy and don't want to do anything for the Lord. But other people will just want to focus on, I'm just sitting and I'm a Mary. I'm sitting at the feet of Jesus and just learning and learning and learning. But feed 5,000, no thank you. To go to be one of the 70 to go door to door knocking on to save souls and to bring them to the mount to hear from the Lord, no thank you. But I'm just going to be one that sits next to Jesus. I just love so some people work, they don't work 6 days, they sit around 6 days, and then they try to attempt for work for the Lord on the day they're supposed to be resting. I give the Lord my Sundays. I go to church on Sunday, Sunday school, Sunday morning, Sunday night, but don't expect me to go out and work. So here's the process. The purpose of this Sabbath rest is to let you understand you need to be working 6 days, and then you're resting 1. And that rest is focused on the Lord to sharpen your axe, preparing for the next 6 days. And so we need to understand that wherever God has placed us, whether in work, whether in employment, whether in a family, we need to be working for the Lord in those positions 6 days, and then resting and learning from the Lord 1 day. And so we need to understand that this process is very important, not just the rest, but also the work. It goes together. 6 days work, 1 day rest. And if you no, that's not saying that it's not Saturday yet. You can't rest at all. You got to keep working through the night. No, it's saying that you have full day. You have a full day's work each of these days. But then on the 6th day, on the 7th day, you need to rest. He says, the 7th day there shall be unto you a holy day, a Sabbath day of rest unto the Lord. And so this is not just resting from our work, but rather in order to focus on the Lord to sharpen us. Whosoever doth work therein shall be put to death. And then the work is exemplified by, you shall kindle no fire throughout your habitations upon the Sabbath day. And so people say, well, a lot of times you see in the New Testament, a lot of scribes and Pharisees trying to give all these great details about what is work and what is not, and all this stuff, and they go into minute detail and saying, oh, Jesus forsake the Sabbath by rubbing heads of corn in his hand so that he could have a lunch as we're walking through to the synagogue or whatever, and that they say, how dare you allow your disciples to do this as well, and rubbing, just that, rubbing a few heads of corn in his hand and then putting them in his mouth. And then that's work. What the Bible says here is, ye shall kindle no fire throughout your habitations on the Sabbath day. So the work requires some great effort, something that you're doing the 6 days to sustain yourself. You're not supposed to do on the 7th day. It doesn't say no work whatever, but kindling a fire. Kindling a fire to do work. Back then, a lot of kindling fires was basically you didn't just, unless you had a flintlock and you did a little stuff, it was a little bit more effort than just striking a match today. But kindling a fire throughout your habitations in the sense of, I'm just going to get a little bit of extra work done today in my spare time. No, he says, give me the whole day. Rest the whole day. Don't just kind of give me part of it. I want your whole day. And so that's where he starts out. When you're building this tabernacle, remember to keep my Sabbath day and not work in it by saying, well, I need to sew a few more curtains for the tabernacle. I'm doing something spiritual, so I'm going to violate God's commands in order to do something great and spiritual for the Lord. That is kind of like the Ananias and Sapphira's mentality. We're going to give half and say that it's all, so that we can contribute to the work of the Lord and receive the blessings of it, and still get the benefits of our fleshly possessions and whatever. And God's saying, hey, no, that's not the way it's going to work. He didn't say, I see you're worshiping that calf, but that's okay. You can still contribute to the Lord. No, the contributing to the Lord is to be done by his people, not the lost world, and not carnal Christians. God says, before I want anything from you, I need you not just over here, I need you over there. I want my people not just to be minimalist Christians. I want you to be with me where I want you to be, as I commanded you to be. And so the free will offering is not for just any old Christian to give and then feel good about themselves. The free will offering is for people who say, hey, I want the Lord's work to go out through all the world. I want the Lord's work to be propagated, and then when it's propagated, when people see the work, they don't look at carnal Christian over here and say, well, he's just doing things in his flesh, but they'll say, wow, that is glorious and great work of the Lord. I want to be part of that as well. And so the goal in the free will offering is to be with people who are already right in there with the Lord in other areas. So oftentimes people say, well, I know that person has a problem in his life, but he gives so much to the Lord in the offering, and he's keeping this church afloat, that I don't want to offend that man lest he might leave, or withhold his offering. And you come into a lot of these things so often that, and in a way, and it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the church. It's not a good thing for the pastor. It's not a good thing for that man to think that he can just buy off the goodness of God. No, God said, the same people that are offering the stuff now, he said in the previous chapter, shall I consume them in a moment? What was the difference between the two chapters? They reconciled with the Lord. The Lord did not necessarily, see, they humbled themselves. They got right. And then God says, now you can give the offering that I previously commanded. And so and then he reminds them, don't do the work on the Sabbath day, but you do the work 6 days. And then verse 4, he says, Moses spake unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, this is the thing which the Lord commanded, saying. Now here's the interesting thing about a free will offering. God commands it of a free will heart. So we oftentimes see that, well, God commands it, so you have to give it whether you like it or not. No. God commands it, but he wants a free will heart. This is a lot of times that some Christians cannot understand. Well, if God commanded it, then we're going to be like robots and we have to do it, or he makes it so that we have to do it. No, he commands it, but he gives you a free will heart to do it. And he wants it from a free will heart, and that's what he commands it. He says he doesn't want a begrudging man. He wants somebody of a free will heart to give the offering. Not out of inopportunity, but out of a desire to see the work of the Lord grow. And so oftentimes you see people saying, well, I can't afford this, I don't want it, but then I'm guilt-tripped in giving it, and therefore I have to give it, and now I can't send my kids to college, I can't feed my children, and if you're having cable, you shouldn't have that anyway. Anyway, you need to. So oftentimes people, out of their inopportunity, give, and not out of a free heart, but because they feel that if they don't give, they will be somehow cursed or somehow not as spiritual a Christian as they ought to be, or whatever, and they feel guilt-tripped. But God says, I command all things from you out of a willing heart. And until your heart is made ready, he doesn't want anything from you. He wants you to get right with him first. He wants you to be holy because he is holy. And then when you are in a heart after the Lord's own heart, then that's when he wants you to contribute. And so if you have issues in your life that you know are wrong in your life, now obviously I'm not saying the perfect person can't, unless you're perfect, you can't give to the Lord. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is that if you're abiding in open sin, don't expect to receive a blessing from the Lord. Don't expect to be a contributor from the Lord. If you're in open sin, I don't really want your money. I don't want to say that so-and-so built this church, and then when people say, oh, so-and-so helped build this church, but look at his wicked lifestyle. Does that glorify the Lord? No, it just propagates an evildoer. So I want somebody who, while not perfect in every action, has a heart that desires to serve the Lord in the way that God has commanded. So God commands, and then he asks of a willing heart. He says, take from among you an offering unto the Lord. Now, this offering is not just to anything, it's just to the Lord. So many people have offerings to whatever. No, the purpose of the free will offering is to give to the Lord. It's to the Lord's purposes. We're not supposed to be taking up free will offerings for every little thing. And no, we're supposed to be doing it for the work of the Lord. There's so many ways you can help in the work of the Lord by giving to many different things, but so oftentimes people have, they just contribute to, Wounded Soldiers Fund, this fund and that fund, and they think they're giving a free will offering to the Lord, and then the Lord's work loses the proper offerings they ought to have had through the church, through the congregation. You see, so oftentimes people say, well, I'm just going to contribute on my own part to the Lord's work somewhere else. but then they don't contribute to their church. They don't contribute to the actual works of the Lord through their church and allow the church as a congregation to distribute as they see, as the Lord moves the church, but rather they want to, well, I give a free will offering over this place and over that place and over there, and their money is all over the place here because of their own desires to help everywhere, and then they lose focus of the Lord's congregation. And that's where they're supposed to give the Lord. In the New Testament church, they set the money at the feet of the apostles. And in this passage, we're going to see that they set it at Moses and the elders' feet. And so we're going to see that. And this is the traditional way that you give a free will offering unto the Lord is through His church. You know, a lot of time, the big problem today, I think, is now that a lot of missionaries I'm seeing, they are asking for offerings from individuals. You know, you want to do the work of the Lord, but you're bypassing the Lord's church in order to build your ministry. You ought not to do that. You need to go through the church. And these are the methods in which God has commanded to be done. The offerings were given to Moses and the elders, and then the Moses and his elders, they commissioned particular people to use the materials obtained to build the tabernacle. They didn't say, hey, if you got broidered robes, show up at this time and just plop them down wherever we need them. And no, he says, bring them there and we're going to distribute as we need and see fit. And so oftentimes, the problem with the donate here button is that they bypass the local church and individuals try to support the Lord's ministries, and not understanding that a lot of times that these missionaries who want individuals to support them don't have an authority of a church that they've gone out of, and they don't want the authority of the church because they want to deceive people directly. That's the problem with these TV evangelists. They say, send your money into this location, send them into the ministry location. Now, if your church wants to support a certain ministry out there or whatever, then that's up to your church to do. But if you go off and just support every little thing because they want money, now obviously if you want to support the little kid with the lemonade stand and odds and ends, like give a donation in a time of need to the Red Cross or whatever. Now I got problems with Red Cross, but that's another thing entirely. But what I'm talking about is the Lord's work, specifically for the Lord's work, not just some sort of humanitarian work out there which you give individually or whatever, but the Lord's work specifically. You need to be going through the local church and not just random places or things, and you need to make sure that your local church is vetting those things, because so oftentimes there are people that want to take advantage of individuals to contribute and so forth. And so here we see that take from among you an offering unto the Lord. Whosoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it, an offering of the Lord, gold and silver and brass and blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen and goat's hair, and ram skins, dyed red, badger skins, shittim wood, and oil for the light, spices for anointing oil, and for the sweet incense, and the onyx stones, and the stones to be set for ephod, for the breastplate, and every wise heart. And so all the way through from verse 4 through 9, he gives the command what to bring. So oftentimes it's very generic. Oh, just bring us money and keep on bringing it, keep on bringing it. No, the free will offering has specific purposes. It was here it was to build the tabernacle of the Lord. And when we have a free will offering, something that's beyond the tithe, we need to have a specific reason and specific things we need. And if today our currency is money, so a lot of times these things you just contribute money, and then we'll go buy the onyx stone, we'll go buy the wood, we'll go buy all these things to build the building or whatever. But the thing is here that it wasn't just limited to one thing, it was limited to a specific list. God listed the things he needed for the tabernacle, and it wasn't just open-ended. It was, this is what we need. If you, like for example, if for some reason we had speakers, we don't need speakers in here, I'm loud enough. If we had speakers and then suddenly they went out and we needed speakers and we hadn't budgeted for them, and because we didn't expect them to go out, and then we say, hey, if you have some good quality speakers for some reason that you're able to give, you can give those. rather than giving money. And then we can look around and find out, and if somebody says, well, I got speakers. Oh, wonderful! We got the speakers, and we got the system donated to us for free. And yet I say, well, we'll still gather a free will offering for some more speakers or whatever. No, the thing has been accomplished. We got the speakers. It's done. We don't need to keep it open-ended. We need to just remember to budget properly for them next time, and so forth. So there was a list of what to bring, and verse 10, and every wise-hearted among you shall come and make all that the Lord hath commanded. And so in this free will offering is that you have first of all a contribution of materials. And second of all, in your free will offering, you have contribution of your time. So the first one is your money, and then the second one is your wise-heartedness, your time, and your treasures, and your talents. Here is the wise-hearted among you shall come, and all that the Lord hath commanded. And so he's saying, hey, congregation, all the material available, this is what we're going to have, and then you guys need to use from that material for the purpose of the project. And so in a free will offering, the job of not only just contributing the materials is for the saved people, but also the job of using those materials is for the saved people. So oftentimes we see people contracting out from without the congregation for a certain job or project that could easily be done by the members of that congregation. We need to realize that, hey, this is our project, not just in giving money, but in the whole process through. Now, obviously, if somebody is not wise-hearted and they don't know how to mix certain paints, and it ends up turning that 500 gallons of paint for the project turns into pink, and when it was supposed to be red, and you're going to have people putting doors upside down because, we got to contribute, we got to do all these things. Now, obviously, you need to contract out. They're not wise-hearted, obviously. But the thing is that if you have wise-hearted members, your members need to know what talents need and have to be met, and then the opportunity not only to contribute materials or money, but the opportunity to contribute your talent and treasures. Your not just your treasures, but also your talent and being wise-hearted. If we have a certain project that somebody in the church is able to do, and then they should be allowed to do it. We say, we got a special friend over here that's friend to the pastor who's not saved, he doesn't go to the church, but we want to give him the project and contribute to his business. No, we want to contribute to the workings of the people in this business. Obviously, if the congregant has the ability to do it, and then he wants to charge double than what the outside guy does, he's not contributing anything, right? But if you are able to do it, then you should be willing to contribute the building of the materials. A carpenter who is a member of a church should be willing to, of his spare time, now obviously not to, the church should, because they provided the money and materials, should give him the things that he needs. You can't expect a carpenter to build a building without wood, right? So you would give him the wood he needs. You don't expect a carpenter to build without being able to sustain his family, right? So you would contribute and make sure that he has the ability to sustain his family. Now, obviously, that builder should contribute whatever he can in his talent and in his ability to not overcharge his church or whatever. But he, out of a willing heart, the church both provides the materials for him to be able to build, and then also provides and then that man provides the talent in order to build the thing, and they work together. And so in this understanding of a free will offering, not only is it those who are made willing to give, but also those who are willing to build, those who are willing to contribute. In this sense, it can be some people are able to give money, and then for the printing of our church invitations, and then other people are able to, of their ability, to take that same invitation and go to a door and knock on it and present the gospel. And so of their wise-heartedness, because they're wise in being able to do that. And so it works together in that sense, in that the church is built in every which way. Some people are wise and be able to contribute, wise-hearted in contributing and offering. Other people are wise-hearted, contributing their talents, and then so forth. And it says, every wise-hearted among you shall come and make all that the Lord hath commanded. Not just whatever you want, but what the Lord has commanded. The ark, the staves thereof, and he starts listing all he listed first the material that they were to contribute, and then the wise-hearted what they were to build. There was a specific list of what to contribute and what to build and so forth, and what their necessities were. Willing with his brazen great, so oftentimes people just contribute, and then the leadership never explains what the money is for. It's like, oh well, you give it to us and that's it. No, I mean obviously they have the management of it, but they also need to explain to the congregation the purpose of everything that they receive. Now, obviously, the contributions of the tithe today is to maintain the building here and to maintain the projects of the printer and printing of our materials, and then to help people to be able to go out and preach the gospel, and also to be able to proclaim the gospel from this pulpit and different things, and to all those things working together is where your offering is going. And then as we are able to get to a larger room to bring in more people and so forth, and it contributes to that. And there's a reason for it. It's not just to pad my pockets. I don't get paid at all from this church, so it's that's not the purpose of the tithe. And when I do get paid, I'm not just going to quietly come along and start paying myself out of the church offering, but rather I will make an announcement, and then the church will decide what the church wants to do with the church offering, because that would be them coming alongside and supporting a wise-hearted pastor, perhaps, to continue his work in a better, more meaningful way. And so whether the money is offerings are contributed to a pastor or to a laborer in construction, it needs to be known what it is to be built and what it is to be for. And there needs to be an authority there. Obviously Moses, then the elders, then the wise-hearted people were underneath Aholiab and Benadab and so forth to do the work. There was a hierarchy and level, and everybody in the congregation contributed to it. Those who, it didn't say in this wise-hearted, it said whoever was wise-hearted, then they would submit to the two men for the work. And so we see that, yes, there is an opportunity for all to work. And that's what I would like as in part of offering the talents to this church, is that I would like to see everybody have their specific ministry that they have a wise-heartedness to do and to build. And then not to be spread about in many different things, but to have that one project as their project, and then as they are able to, we all come together as a congregation to support those ministries. And so here we go, the pens, and then the close of the service, and to the holy place, the holy garments for Aaron, the priest, and the garments. So all these things were built by the people within the congregation. They didn't contract out to the pagan lands around them. They were from within. And the congregation of the children of Israel departed from the presence of Moses. Now here's another thing that's interesting. A lot of times that a lot of free will offerings or offerings are sprung upon people at the last minute. A lot of times they come to church, oh, I'm going to hear from the Lord today, and then, surprise, surprise, we need this big, great thing or whatever, and a new ministry that nobody ever thought about, and we need the money today. No. Well, what did Moses do? He gave the commands of the Lord, and he says, all the congregation of the children of Israel departed from the presence of Moses. Where's the contribution? Why didn't he force them to give all right then and there? No, they left, decided in their heart what they were going to be giving, and that they came back and gave it. And see here he says, and all the congregation of the children of Israel departed from the presence of Moses, and they came, everyone whose heart was stirred. Not out of guilt, not out of, well, I'm here, and Ahololab is right. Lab is over there, and he knows me personally, and he knows that I should be contributing, but I don't really feel like doing it. But because he's there and peer pressure, I really okay. I will give this, whatever. Okay, no. Did that help the guy? Was his heart really following after the commands to be willing-hearted? see the command not only to give by God, but to be willing-hearted to give. And so the process of contributing to a free will offering is to be freely given, not out of constraint, but out of a willing heart, desiring for the work of the Lord to go forth. And then so oftentimes preachers think, well, if I don't get it to them now, they're going to not want to give it later. So I need to kind of coerce them to. No, don't do that at all. God will lay upon their heart what they need to give, and no constraint or manipulation on your part ought to be given. He says, and they came, everyone whose heart stirred him up, and everyone whom his spirit made willing, and they brought the Lord's offering to the work of the tabernacle of the congregation. So they brought it to church. They brought it to the tabernacle. They brought it to the congregation. They didn't just bring it to Benadab's financial fund, ministry fund for the tabernacle. They brought it to the congregation. The congregation distributed it as needed. And they came, both men and women, many as were willing-hearted. Now, this wasn't limited to a certain group. It's whoever was wise-hearted. It was who was willing-hearted. Willing-hearted for the materials, wise-hearted for the building. And they came, both men and women, as many as were willing-hearted, and brought bracelets and earrings and rings and tablets and jewels of gold, and every man that offered an offering of gold unto the Lord. So, see, it wasn't like, well, they said I need to bring clothes of purple or whatever, but I don't have purple, so I'm going to go out and buy it. No, see, everybody brought what they already had. It didn't say you have to go out of your way to get something that you don't have in order to buy that at crazy prices in order so that you can contribute that item. No, it says those who had gold contributed gold. Those who had bracelets of gold contributed bracelets of gold. Those who had earrings contributed to their earrings. They gave what they had to the work of the Lord, and then the Lord from there distributed it out. So oftentimes you see, sometimes every once in a while you see a lady put her engagement ring. You hear these stories: engagement ring and the offering. I don't want your engagement rings, ladies. The Lord doesn't need your engagement ring. Your husband really put a lot of effort and money in getting that thing. We're not going to sell it. First of all, resale value on rings is a lot less than what people buy, and so that doesn't help. Just give. If you want to give something you already have, but not your engagement rings. Okay, I don't want to see any engagement rings or the like that is supposed to be for some other purpose in the offering plate. I don't want to have to deal with that. And so, but the thing is here that, again, this is out of their willing heart for a bigger purpose. I don't see a bigger purpose than that we will be doing here that requires your wedding rings. And so, all the jewels of gold, and every man that offered an offering unto the Lord. Now, if you just got gold and whatever sitting around, sure, whatever. But I don't think we do.
Gold teeth.
Gold teeth, fought that thing out. No, but you understand the point there is that whatever you had available to give, that was what you give. So oftentimes people have so much to give, but not willing a heart. Mm-hmm. And every man with whom was found blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen and goat's hair and red skins of gold, badger skins, brought them. They whatever they had, they brought. And so he's not asking you to go out and get some extravagant thing to bring an offering to, but rather what you already have. See, God, whether you are wise-hearted to be able to build, or whether you're willing-hearted to be able to give, God already just wanted what they already had. And so these great offerings that people try to contribute to, going beyond their ability, God doesn't want that. He wants a willing heart out of what you already have to give to the Lord. He doesn't expect somebody who makes $2 an hour to give $5 an hour. So oftentimes you see these people in missions conference giving. They say you just need to dig deep. I don't know how we can budget for what we give, but we always give more and more. I mean, from the sounds of it, some of these people are already giving 250% of what they already make, because every year they supposedly give more to the Lord than the last year. And so I'm like, where's this money coming from? And they say, well, I always find a way, I always budget. Well, good for you then. But the thing is, God doesn't expect His free will offerings to come from places you have no idea about. The Bible says that if you don't sit down to count the costs, and you're not able to finish the project, then you are foolish, basically. So oftentimes people say, well, I'm going to give $2,500 every month to the missions offering for the free will, and I only make $2,000. No, I mean, count the cost, buddy. Your house will have a great fall or whatever. And so, now obviously there are some people that they are wise-hearted and say, hey, I know that in my ingenuity I can find a side project to meet that goal. So that right now I'm making $2,000 an hour, but God has given me this wisdom to build this project and to build this business, that I know that within a month or two, once I get this thing off the ground, I know for sure that I'm going to be making $3,000, $5,000, whatever a month. So it'll be quite easy for me to do that. And I'm just going to go ahead and do it a little early. You already counted the cost that you are able to do something more because you're wise-hearted. And so that's fine. That's not a big deal. That's not a problem. But the problem comes when people preach from the pulpit saying, well, you just need to dig deep and give, and then you're giving things that you are not able to give, and you're promising things. The Bible says, let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. I have a problem with people promising at the beginning, if you're able to do it, and I understand the focus of it so that they know that their missionaries are going to have a certain amount of money every month, and that they're not going to have a shortfall, that people make a promise at the beginning of the year to contribute a certain amount so that their missionaries can be supported. I understand that concept. But the problem is that so many people in the emotion of a 1 or 2 day meeting say, well, I'm going to contribute twice what I make, and then those missionaries aren't able to have it. Plus, they make a promise at the beginning of the year for the whole year, and then that causes them to break their promises that they promised to keep to the Lord. If you make a promise to the Lord, you need to keep it. And that's why God said it's better to have your yeas be yea and your nays be nay. If you can contribute this month, contribute. Don't make a promise for the whole year to contribute. So I have a little problem with faith promise missions giving, which they tell you to make a promise for the whole year, and then if you don't give it, then you're breaking your promise to God. I don't like that type of stuff. But I understand saying, hey, this is what I know I can give, and I know it's going to be there, and I promise to give this for. And if you want to do it that way, sure, whatever, that's fine. But I prefer that these things are all set, and that it's not made out of promise, but this is what I can give. This is as I can give this month, next month, and so forth. I know this, and so it's not out of constraint, but out of a willing heart that you're giving faith promise. You're giving to certain missions, or you're giving to certain big project. It's not out of a promise I made at the beginning of the year and I can't fulfill it, but rather out of a willing heart from something that I already have. So that's what we see here. Everyone that did offer an offering of silver and brass brought the Lord's offering, and every man with whom was found shittim wood for any work of the service brought it. And so we see that they were already found with these people. They already had it. And all the women that were wise-hearted did spin with their hands and brought that which they had spun, both of blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen. So we see as well that both men and women contributed. And not just contributed, well, I don't make money. I'm a stay-at-home wife. Well, you can knit things. You got doilies or whatever. I don't know. I always hear about ladies making doilies or whatever. I have no idea. Bridget's the knitter in the family. I'm not. But there are skills that you have that are not necessarily the normal business skills. Like, I don't have a bunch of money to give, but I have the ability to feed the men who are building. I have the ability to, at the potluck, to make a wonderful dinner, so that after the end of a great meeting, that that people are focused on maybe the certain missions given or maybe a certain special project, that they don't have to be saying, well, now I'm hungry and I can't focus on giving to the Lord because my stomach is growling. That now we have food over there because the ladies prepared it and then was able, out of their ability, to undergird us like that Proverbs 31 lady, so that we can focus on other things rather than our bellies. Which now I'm focusing on my belly, but anyway. So we see here, and all the women whose hearts were stirred them up in wisdom. Spun goes here. So yes, their hearts were stirred up. It's okay to be stirred up to give an offering to the Lord and to be made willing. Now obviously, I don't believe in coercion, but I also understand that there is in verse 21 here, look at that. It says, "And came everyone whose heart stirred him up." So they put it in their heart to do this. Some people say, well, I just don't feel it. I don't really feel like giving. Well, the thing is that people focus on feelings, but rather it's a choice. They decided to stir their hearts up. They knew that this was right, and so they made themselves willing. So it was not out of coercion. It was not out of, oh, we need this now and an inopportunity, but from their ability and from what they decided to give as the Lord led them. And even verse 27, the rulers brought onyx stones and stones to be set for the ephod, for the breastplate, and spice and oil for the lamp. Verse 29, the children of Israel brought a willing offering unto the Lord, every man and woman whose heart was made them willing to bring for all manner of work which the Lord hath commanded to be made by the hand of Moses. And so remember again, the purpose of these free will offerings is not for any old project that the guy at the pulpit decides to bring up. You need to consider the guy's faith. You need to consider that he is doing it for the Lord. The project, yes, we understand that the pastor gives a vision for the church and goals for the church and purposes for the church and all these things, but those visions and those goals need to be for the glory of God. And they can't just be for the guy's pet projects. And so it was from which the Lord had commanded. If there's no command to give an offering, then I don't feel right giving it. That's why I stick to Sunday mornings for the offering. I don't feel right just contributing every single service we have. Well, it's missions conference offering every day. It's Sunday school offering. Morning it's an offering. Night it's an offering. It's everybody an offering. It's almost like you're paying the guy to do his work up here, but no, you're not. You're giving to the Lord. You're not paying me to preach. You're giving to the Lord for His work to go out around the world, and so forth. And it says Moses, and it says, and they commanded to be made by the hand of Moses. So we see that the commands are of the Lord, but by the hand of Moses. So we understand what we need to do for the Lord's work through the pastor and through the leadership of the churches of what needs to be done. And then we considering their faith, say, yes, that's what we need to do together. There's a definite leadership in this, following after the Lord through the commands of Moses in order to bring this free will offering. So while you need to consider the faith of the pastor, that is to the Lord, that the direction to be gone is through the pastor, through the bishop, through the leadership, and so forth. And Moses said unto the children of Israel, see, the Lord hath called by name Bezaleel, the son of Uriah, the son of Hur, the tribe of Judah, and hath filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom and understanding and knowledge and in all manner of workmanship. And the second thing, he gave the project over to somebody. He delegated it. Moses delegated this thing to those that God commanded him to do. And so we see also here specifically that when we are contributing to a project, we need to respect the leaders that God put in position. And not only that God says, hey, this person needs to do this work, then contribute to his work. So we understand that in our free will offerings to build a ministry, that, for instance, if the pastor is leading the work, then contribute in the pastor's vision. But if perhaps Rudy is leading a evangelism thing in here, maybe he's doing a bigger push for door knocking or something, and the pastor says, hey, follow Rudy's direction on this, then that would be Rudy's project. And so we understand, whoever God lays upon the pastor's heart, the leader's heart, to focus on that project, then that's what will be built. And so what happens? Well, they say, well, I'm just going to go to the pastor because Rudy's not my authority. Rudy doesn't matter, and I'm going to do door knocking the way the pastor wants me to do directly. And even though the pastor gave that authority to Rudy, perhaps in a future ministry or whatever, then that means that you need to respect his position that he was given. See, the wise-hearted people did not go to Moses. They went to the gentleman who was put in charge of the project. They went to Bezalel, the son of Uriah. And so we understand that, yes, while we are all submitting one to another, and the pastor is your equal as well, I'm not a special group above you or anything, but rather in our faith, and considering our faith, and in our offices, when the pastor has an office, you respect that office according to the faith that the Lord has given him, not in some what he wants to do. And then when the pastor gives a project over to a certain person, you all support that certain person in his project. And so when we have ministries in this church, you respect the office that the pastor is given that ministry to, and so forth. And so we see that in the free will offerings, that whoever is in charge of that project, you come alongside that person to help him in that project, and so forth. And to devise, and then because why? Why? Because he had better knowledge in the intricacies, perhaps even the pastor did, or Moses does. You know, Moses is leading a nation. Bezalel here is building a building. So now, if I have a greater skill in leadership and delegation, but I'm not like a specialist in a certain area of ministry, then, and yet I know somebody who's wise-hearted in that specific thing and has a desire for that specific ministry, then I'm going to say, hey, run with it. Go with it. Everybody focus on this. If you want to be part of this ministry, follow after him. Do what he says. And because why? Because because a lot of times pastors don't know how to delegate, and they think, well, I don't want anybody else to have more power than me. I want to be I want to be in charge of everything. As time goes on, when I see somebody who is able to be a treasurer, I'm going to hand them over the checkbook and say, hey, be in charge of this. You can do a better job than I can. Hey, contribute, figure out where we need to be legally or whatever. Somebody is better at that stuff than I am. I have no problem handing it over to them and then allowing the congregation to respect that position. And so he gave it to them, and then they gave, and then he would not only did this, he devised curious works in gold. He had filled him, verse 31, he had filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom, in understanding, and in knowledge, in all manner of workmanship. And it talks about the cutting stones, putting in his heart. And verse 34, that he put in his heart that he may teach, both he and Elohab, the son of Abimashach, the tribe of Dan. And then he filled, and so we see here that in this ranking, in taking the offerings of the Lord, is that these men who received these certain ministries were of a willing heart to teach others. So whether it's the pastor needs to have a willing heart to teach you guys to do the ministry of the work of the Lord in a specific ministry. Not the pastor has the oversight of the whole thing, but if you have a specific ministry God's put on your heart, not only in money but in wise-heartedness to be able to do something for the Lord, then God has given the pastor to be able to teach you. He's given that certain ministry to teach you in that ministry. And he given a ranking there. And he filled with wisdom of heart to work all manner of work in the engraver and all cunning workmanship. See, not everybody received the Spirit of the Lord to do the specific work and to have that gift, but they were able to teach others to do it as well. And so forth, and it lists all the things. And chapter 36, verse 2, it says, Moses called Bezalel, Aholiab, and every wise-hearted man in whose heart the Lord had put wisdom, even everyone whose heart was stirred him up to come up to the work to do it. And they received of Moses all the offering which the children of Israel had brought for the work of the service of the sanctuary, to make it withal. And they brought yet unto him free offerings every morning. And all the wise-hearted that wrought all the work of the sanctuary came every man from his work which they had made. And they spake unto Moses, saying, the people bring much more than enough for the service of the work of the Lord. And the Lord commanded them to make. And Moses gave a commandment, and they caused it to be proclaimed throughout the camp, saying, let neither man nor woman make any more work for the offering of the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from bringing. For the stuff they had was sufficient for all the work to make, and too much. So if you do the free will offering properly, you'll have enough for the work. You don't have to fear about losing a certain amount. I always see these things circulating around Facebook. How to increase the offerings in your church. How to do all these fancy things or whatever. I don't care about all that garbage. If God never commanded an offering in the church, I wouldn't have had an offering plate. All right? It doesn't matter to me. But the thing is that when you do it the Lord's way, you do it right, you'll have enough for the project, and then indeed too much. And here's the thing is that those who restrained from giving, they were cut off from giving. They were refrained from. And so oftentimes people have these open-end projects and say, well, we have more, so let's just roll it over to a different project. Let's just roll it over to a different project. Keep the money coming in for this project, but roll it over to a different project. Somebody gives money to a bus system, and they say, oh, we got enough buses, but let's roll it over to a different project. You know, and people never wanted their money to go to that. They weren't willing-hearted to give to that, but it was given to something else. No, the Bible talks about how that every free will offering needs to have a definite project. It need to have a definite direction and a definite authority of what's going to happen to that money and where the project's going to be, who's in charge of it. And it's not just give your money and not worry about who's in charge of that offering or whatever, who's in charge of delegating what happens to it. No, it was clear cut in Scripture where that free will offering was going, who was in charge, and who everybody was supposed to contribute with and to learn from in that project, and how to do it in their process. So when we give a free will offering, yes, free will offerings are biblical, but they're not just for any old thing. They're for something that needs to be started or needs to have a bigger push. And then we also see that if you don't give when the call is called out to give, you can lose out in that. You see, there is much more to give, but some people didn't give. And so they couldn't say, hey, I was contributing to that. They lost out on a blessing there. They weren't able to contribute because enough was given. So when we give a free will offering, understand that the free will offering, whether you contribute or not, you can receive a blessing through it, but then you can eventually, once that project is done, it needs to be done. It needs to be cut off. So as we give a free will offering, let's do it willingly, of a willing heart, of people that are sanctified to the Lord in His work. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you, blessed you give to us, Lord. I pray that you'll help us to be sanctified to your work. Help us to do what is right in you and in your glory. Help us not to contribute and think that means anything to you if we're not of a willing heart or not sanctified unto you, Lord. Help us to be in the proper mindset to give, and help us as a church to receive of your people those things that you would have us to receive, and not take it from the lost world or people that will give glory to themselves. Help us to be a righteous people doing a righteous work in Jesus'